The Breakdown. A special presentation from Let's Talk It All podcast.
We must, indeed, all hang together, or assuredly we shall all hang separately. People willing to trade their freedom for temporary security deserve neither and will lose both. Benjamin Franklin. Bottom line. Freedom is not free.
The uncomfortable elephant and donkey in the room for this statement is arms. Specifically, firearms. 245 years ago, this tool of man was instrumental in securing our independence, and has been critical in maintaining our freedom ever since. As the decades and centuries passed, the tools and technology changed to keep up with the times. Some history. April 1775, Lexington and Concord. The British planned on confiscating arms and ammunition from the colonist. The colonist had innovated a musket that would shoot further and with more accuracy than its British counterpart. The British troops met with resistance, and we got the shot heard around the world. July 1776, Philadelphia. Declaration of Independence is signed, and America is born as we tell King George we no longer want or need him. A little more. 1791. After the Articles of Confederation failed, the Constitution is drafted into existence. While the Constitution addressed the government, and how it would work, there still needed to be something that addressed the rights of the people. The first 10 amendments to the new Constitution were all about the rights of the people, and it was called the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights. The First Amendment, the freedom of speech, press, assembly and religion. The Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. The Third Amendment, citizens do not have to house soldiers. The Fourth Amendment, no unreasonable search or arrest. The Fifth Amendment, no double jeopardy or no witness against yourself. The Sixth Amendment, rights of accused in criminal cases. The Seventh Amendment, a trial by jury. The Eighth Amendment, no excessive bail or cruel punishment. The Ninth Amendment, people get rights not listed in the Constitution. The 10th Amendment, any rights not given to the federal government are given to the states and people. When people argue about the meaning of the amendments, specifically the Second Amendment, they will say it is racist and was put in to control the slaves. It was an afterthought when they added it. It doesn't flow like the rest of the amendments do. It only pertains to the National Guard. It was only meant for muskets. Anyone who has spent time with the founding documents, and with other writings of the time, and who approaches the subject with an open mind, will see that those arguments are without merit.
Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia, being necessary the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. Those 27 words are what stand between a democratic republic and a dictatorship. They weren't placed in the Bill of Rights to control the slaves, or because they needed an even number of amendments, and an extra one was written. This is the Second Amendment for a reason. It is meant to provide security for the other 9 in the Bill of Rights. Violence has been around for almost ever. Cain found a rock to use against his brother, that did not end well for Abel. Years later, David would use a rock to slay Goliath when forced to protect himself and others. So, is it the rock, or the person that was the problem? Hands, feet, clubs, knives, swords, pointy sticks, any inanimate object could be used for violence. Let's take a look at the violence that has led to deaths. Gun violence takes 2 forms in the U.S. Individual shootings, defined as a shooting event with 3 or fewer people wounded or killed. Mass shootings, defined as a shooting event with 4 or more people wounded or killed. This number does not include the shooter. Individual shootings. These are far more common for several reasons. Intentionally self-inflicted. Unintentional. Interpersonal violence, crime. Legal intervention. Undetermined intent. Mass shootings. These fall into a few categories: school shooting, targeted shootings, random shootings, mass shootings. School and targeted shootings have their roots in mental health issues that have either been missed or diagnosed, but then no follow-up to ensure the safety of the public. There are also times that law enforcement drops the ball, when an individual is brought to their attention. Mass shootings. Random shootings have their roots in criminal activity or behavior. Gang activity, personal disputes, and domestic disturbances are the big three for this category. School shootings. These events, as horrific as they may be, make up a very small percentage of firearm homicides in the United States. Making schools a more hardened target is the most practical solution to reducing those events.
Running the numbers. 450 million guns in 2022, 120 million gun owners in 2022, 20 million AR-15 style rifles in 2022, 6.8 million guns imported in 2020, 7.0 million guns produced in 2019, 60 million NICS checks done in 2021, 63 billion firearm-related sales in 2020, 19.3 thousand firearm homicides in 2020, 0.5 thousand mass homicides in 2020. Running the numbers. 19,389 firearm homicides in 2020, 518 killed in mass shootings in 2020, 2.67% of homicides are mass shootings. 3 killed in school shootings in 2020, 0.015% of all gun homicides, 0.579% of mass shootings. Defensive gun use. Guns prevent an estimated 2.5 million crimes a year, or 6,849 every day. Most often, the gun is never fired, and no blood, including the criminals, is shed. Every year, 400,000 life-threatening violent crimes are prevented using firearms. 60% of convicted felons admitted that they avoided committing crimes when they knew the victim was armed. 40% of convicted felons admitted that they avoided committing crimes when they thought the victim might be armed. Felons report that they avoid entering houses where people are at home because they fear being shot. People shot. 2021, 3,766. 2020, 3,443. 2019, 2,221. 2018, 2,465. Illegal guns seized. 2015 4,838. 2016 5,890. 2018 9,800. 2019 10,000. 2021 5,900, 290, assault weapons. Law-abiding citizens are not the problem. 0.000416667% of the gun-owning population might be attributed to a school or targeted mass shooting. 500 versus 120 million. Firearms used 2,500,000 times a year to prevent a crime or save a life. Each year 2% of gun owners will be in a situation where they will need a firearm. The Supreme Court has ruled that the police are not obligated to protect a citizen. Current status with crime on the rise would demand that people be able to exercise their Second Amendment right as intended 245 years ago. Our leaders and those citizens that can afford it are protected by the same means that they want to take away from the average citizen. Think about that for a minute. There is another agenda being played out by our leaders. Think about this. Chicago PD seizes 5,000 to 10,000 illegal guns a year. That's just one city with strict gun laws. Iraq, while under the control of the U.S. military, its citizens were allowed to keep their firearms. Almost all were assault weapons. We 100% support the Ukrainians to keep and bear arms but find ways to make it illegal for U.S. citizens to do the same. The actions of 0.000142% of the population are forcing legislation on the other 99.9999857% of us. What can be done? Enforce the laws already on the books. Harsher sentencing for crimes involving illegal firearms. Hold TAs more accountable for weapon prosecutions. Increase security protocols for schools. Any crime with a firearm is moved up to the next higher felony. Make training, not restrictions, mandated to purchase and own. Amend psychiatric laws to favor the public safety. Accountability for actions, regardless of age. What can be done? Designation of gangs engaged in criminal activity as terrorist organizations. Designation of drug cartels as terrorist organizations. Designation of domestic groups engaged in criminal activity as terrorist organizations. Mass shooters receive a minimum life sentence in a supermax facility or in a mental facility with release to a correctional facility for life if cured. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. This is a serious issue, and needs to be addressed with serious solutions. So far, all government action has been directed at the law-abiding citizen, and not at the criminal elements that care nothing about the law, or a citizen's rights. Get involved, get educated, and take a stand for the rights that are not only your heritage, but your birthright.